Okay, cool. Hey. We're back. So they all heard about your turning 30 journey. We also watched your video. But just to give you some context about our class, so I know that we chatted a little bit yesterday and we had an experience with the Tempe campus. This is another vibe, so I'm really excited about the flavor for this classroom. But okay, so this is ASU's SWU 250, which is stress management tools. So we are talking all things, what the hell is happening in my life right now? And specifically, how do I handle those things? So again, to kind of give you a little bit of context, what's happening in their world right now, this is midterm season, first semester. And a lot of students, it's their first year, so it's a lot of crazy going on in their brains, in their lives, trying to keep up with papers and studying for exams and having exams and figuring out what they're going to do for their fall break. And then, of course, again, some students, it's their first semester, they're traveling here from maybe thousands of miles away, some only not too far, but still they're away from family, friends, familiarity. Having a boatload of different responsibilities and obligations that they're trying to learn to manage for themselves for the first time instead of being micromanaged and kind of told what to do from mom and dad and school and coaches, right? It's like, here's life, go do it, without having been prepared for that. So the purpose of this class was, I think 10 years ago now, it came into existence for that very reason, to really help students be able to manage what happens when life presents all of these transitions, all of these obstacles, chaos, etc. And you've had your fair share of those things too. Wait, are you on mute or what's happening?
No.
Oh, okay. I was like, okay.
I'm naturally very soft-spoken, so I'm talking extra loud today.
Well, we didn't hear you. It looked like you were laughing, but we didn't hear anything. Okay, I was just making sure, like, oh no, we need to call support back. Okay, so that is kind of the context of this class, why it exists, and why these beautiful people are here. So I would like for you to kind of give us some context, take us back in the day when this was where you were, and what strategies, whether they worked or not, you employed.
To get adjusted to college?
Yes.
Ooh, okay. So I was a freshman in college in 2007 before Uber, Lyft ever existed. And I remember I actually remember like my first day of school, we had our freshman inquiry writing seminar, which was very similar to this. It was a 2-part class. And I remember going to school and just feeling extremely nervous because most of my life I have been told what to do and how to do it. And this is the first time in my life where I have to fully depend on myself for my decision making. And that shit is scary. So I'm also very introverted. So the first thing I did was I tried to make a friend. And because I'm very introverted, I'm not really good with small talk and all that stuff. So the first thing I did was join a club. And the club I joined was Same TV. That was our school's like broadcast, like camera club, whatever. And that's how I made my first friend. And that one friend that I made, which was probably my second week of college, ended up being probably one of the closest people in my life throughout college. Like I just clinged on to her because she's very extroverted. So she's like my wing woman, and we would pull up to like parties and all these other social events where there was free food. And she would do a lot of the talking for me. So that's kind of like how I started to maneuver through it. But I also have a panic disorder. So there were a lot of challenges in terms of just being social and also managing my course load and commuting 2 hours one way to get to school.
So talk a little bit about the panic disorder, because you are very aware of that now, but we're not aware of that, and even what you were experiencing when it first happened. So kind of talk, how did that story happen?
Yeah, so to be very candid, I'm gonna be super candid because I don't like to sugarcoat things, but when I was a freshman in college, although I excelled academically, and that actually came very easily to me, the social stuff and actually just dealing with the amount of thoughts that come into my brain was very hard for me. Um, Context, I grew up in a house with 7 siblings and single parent household. So although when I was younger, I would get overwhelming flustered. I would have like little temper I don't want to call them temper tantrums because I never hurt anybody, but I would have little moments, as I call them. And during my freshman year at college, I was self-harming. And I was also in a lot of ways very depressed because I was not able to fully get adjusted to college life. And also just a lot of pressure. You know, you have to pay for books. Now you have to pay for your own food. I got kicked off the phone bill. And I also have to, you know, go to class. And so I'm just thinking, like, how am I going to maintain all these things? And so one day, it wasn't actually until my junior year of college that I got diagnosed with having an actual panic disorder. But I was going to my counselor to see if I was on track to matriculate and graduate. And all of a sudden, I think it all happened very swiftly. But the first thing I started to notice was that my hands were shaky. And I started to feel my chest get tight. I started feeling lightheaded because I felt like I couldn't breathe and no oxygen was getting to my brain. And also I could not speak. So I kind of just sat on the floor in the hallway and I was just like in the fetal position because lights seemed to be a lot brighter than they normally were. Sounds were amplified as well. So I literally just sat on the floor crying because I couldn't even get my words out, and covered my ears, and I would just close my eyes and I just kind of sat in the fetal position bawling helplessly until one other student saw me like basically losing it. And I got escorted to the guidance counselor's office. And so she started to ask me, like, what's wrong? Like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? And I literally just kept looking at her. I was like, I can't even tell you. I just feel like everything is hitting me all at once. And I like to describe me having a panic attack. It feels like 2 things. It feels like someone has come and shaken up my snow globe. Like, you know, the snow was settled and out of nowhere, someone just shook everything up and it's like, oh, what is all this? But it also feels like all of the thoughts inside of my brain are exploding and they're just coming out the top of my head. And now they're just swirling around me and I can't grab onto one just to, like, you know, get a grip on anything. That's what it feels like. So I get paralyzed by my brain. That's what it feels like. I'm paralyzed by my thoughts.
Now, so you're very, very articulate in explaining what it feels like, what it looks like, and even kind of the onset. But that wasn't something that you were able to do in the beginning. And that is something that I'm really trying to support students in better understanding who they are, what stress looks like for them, what are some tools and ways that they can manage, right? Being able to clearly articulate the onset, or prior to, I should say, what it looks like when it's happening, and then maybe some strategies that they can employ to reverse that situation, right? So for you specifically, what kind of process did you go through to be able to get to this place where you're able to effectively describe what it looks like in detail?
Yeah. So the first thing I did was I went to therapy. And therapy, I know some people don't really like the idea of sharing their business with a stranger, but the purpose of it is not so much to share your business and expose you. It's about making you aware of what your thought patterns are and your habits, because all of this is cyclical, right? So, like, basically, in order to identify what my patterns were, I had to start journaling. That was like the first thing my therapist made me do. She's like, every time you feel like you're getting supremely anxious to the point where you can't handle it, I want you to write down what was going on in the days leading up to that. What were you experiencing in your body? What were you putting into your body, as in what were you eating? And like, who was around you? Like, who were you interacting with? And I think that really helps me. As I looked back and I started reading the journals, there were a lot of patterns. So, like, one pattern is sleep deprivation. My college class, it was, my school was 2 hours. Like, I lived in Queens. My school was in Harlem. From my house to my college, it took me 2 hours to get there on public transportation. So
one way you said yesterday, one way.
Yeah, one way. So, I mean, one time I woke up at Yankee Stadium because I was so exhausted trying to do this damn 7:15 a.m. morning class. So once I got diagnosed, I stopped doing morning classes because I'm not a morning person. I know this about myself from that experience. My brain is not fully awake until after 11 a.m. So that was the first thing. Sleep deprivation is one. Two, the food that I put into my body. As a fitness instructor, what they tell you, what you're taught is that the primary source of energy comes from the sun. That's it. Every single food that you touch has to touch the sun, whether it's growing a vegetable or it's the cow that was eating grass to gain enough weight to feed you. All of it comes from the sun. So you have to eat foods that are closer to the source, which is the sun. And by the time you eat a bunch of manufactured food, it's like the quality of that energy has been depreciated. And so your body's not getting enough nutrients. So that was another thing, eating healthy, sleep deprivation, and also just like how I manage my time. I need to see how I manage my time. And that what I learned in terms of time management is that I'm not someone who likes to have multiple things in front of me. I think linearly. That is actually the biggest key that I learned, was like how to go from thinking circularly, which is like, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this, I got to do that, to thinking linearly like this, step A, B, C, D.
Now, when you say that particular process, step A, B, C, D, is that for one task and then move on and do that same process for the next task? Or what does that look like for you specifically?
So for me, as someone who's had a full-time job and then also was working as an entrepreneur, every single day I have a to-do list, 5 things. I have 5 things that I must do every single day. And what I do is I literally just walk through my day and try to get them all off the list. So if it's not on my list of 5 things to do, then I'm not doing it. And that's how I'm able to like get a lot of stuff done. And then in terms of how I use my time to get those tasks done, I commit a certain amount of time to get the task done, and I will not move on to the next task until I get that first one done.
Right. So I want to pause before moving on to the next subject and switch the camera around so that, yay, there they are. Are there questions that you guys want to jump in here and start asking based on what we've discussed thus far? Questions, thoughts, things that you want to know. She's an open book, so yes, yeah. Question.
How do you like stick to a to-do list without? I will write out like to-do list, like schedule out a whole day, and then I won't do it. Like
so sticking to the to-do list.
Some discipline to like make yourself really stick to it like that.
I heard, how do I stick to my to-do list, and that was it.
And that's the gist of it, yeah. Yes. Like writing out the list is one thing, but then what processes or practices do you employ to stay self-disciplined enough to commit to the to-do list?
So I'm gonna be honest with you, right? Like when I first started making to-do lists and setting goals, I was just trying to like, a lot of it was coming from like a hurtful, vengeful place. So I will say this, I thought that motivation existed and it doesn't. It does not exist. I was working motivationally. Like example would be, I was like trying to, get the attention of dudes or like accomplish goals based on the fact that someone told me I couldn't do it. But how I actually hold myself accountable now is I repeat this mantra to myself, and I've been saying it to myself for like a while. And it's that if you want things that you never had, you have to do things that you've never done. I come from a lower income community where, oftentimes my clothes were shared and food was rationed out because there were so many of us. And I think that once I realized how much I did not want to return to that, any single day I have something to do that feels like it's conductive and it's going to help me get closer to my goals. I just keep that in the back of my mind. Like, I know who I want to be, and I know that all the things on my to-do list will get me to closer to who I want to be. And so that's why I'm able to be like, nah, I don't have time to grab coffee with you unless you cut in the check. Like, that's how I am. But in terms of like just keeping myself disciplined, there are definitely days when I don't accomplish all 5 things on my list. So I just put them off to the next day and I'll do it again. And that's when I start to practice forgiveness and recognize that I'm not this like perfect person. And meditation helps you actually focus throughout your day.
Other questions, thoughts, comments? Yes.
So when you were going through therapy, what stuck out the most for you? Like, was it the journaling? What process like really helped you and you take with you today that really helped you?
The biggest thing that I learned is that really sticks in my mind from therapy is that you can't feel more than one emotion at a time. And so because you can't feel more than one emotion at a time, you have the power to switch your emotions. And that insight totally just changed my perspective on everything. So what I would do is when I would get depressed, I would set a timer for myself. And it sounds really wild to think that like, it's hard to do sometimes when you're really deep in it. But I was just like, I can't sit here and sit in my sadness for too long because it'll just drive me deeper and deeper into it. So I would literally put a little calendar on my thing, like, all right, this is it. Like, finish off your last tears at 5 p.m. on Tuesday. And then after that, and I'll tell my friends too, because my friends always hold me accountable to get my things done. So I'm like, all right, I put in my calendar 5 p.m. on Tuesday. I'm not going to cry and talk about this dude anymore. I'm not going to complain about this anymore. And if I do it, my friends will check me on it. And I think that just having friends that hold you accountable to be a better version of you has helped a lot. But that whole you can only experience one emotion at a time thing has been a major key for me.
Questions? Yes. It's okay.
Hello. I'm not too familiar with how panic attacks kind of work, so I was wondering how you while you're having the panic attack, you mentioned that your hands were shaking and you had just you're paralyzed by your thoughts. So I'm wondering how you kind of recovered from that and kind of how you calmed yourself down during such a high situation.
Okay, so how I calm myself down and how do I like come out of it? Wow. So 2 tactics that I use when I am highly anxious, when I'm severely anxious, I go into the state of disassociation. And disassociation, it feels like I am having an outer body experience. I don't know if anyone in the room has ever experienced those days where you feel like you're kind of floating above your body and a lot of things around you just don't even seem real. I like to describe it as like, I feel like I'm in the Game Boy version of like Pokemon Gold and I'm like Ash Ketchum and I'm trying to catch these Pokeballs, but like there are no Pokeballs and Pokemon in real life. So none of it feels real. It feels like I'm in a game. And so what I do is I recognize that I need to ground myself. So when I'm having a panic attack, I feel like I'm losing grip of reality. The first thing I might do is I phone a friend. And I literally have done this multiple times in the middle of the workday. I will go to a quiet, darkly lit space. Sometimes you might see me sitting under a desk and I will call my friend and just ask them to tell me how their day is going and what they're doing. And just hearing someone else say, hey, I'm sitting at my desk, just like typing in my computer. I've been answering emails, blah, blah, blah. Listening to that, it helps me visualize their day and it helps ground me and it reminds me that I'm here on earth and I'm a part of like society. And then the other thing that I do, if my friends they can't pick up the phone, I will go outside for a walk and I will literally just watch people and start to recite the things that they're wearing and the colors that I see. And that's kind of like a grounding technique for me to get reassociated back into reality. So I'll watch a woman, she'll walk down the street and I'm like, okay, she has on a teal top, he has on a red hat. They have 2 kids, one of the kids is blonde. And I'll just be saying those things in my head so that I know that the world is like, I'm kind of just trying to slow down my world and not focus so much on all the craziness that's happening in my head.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great question. Other questions? Thoughts? Things you want to know? Advice?
Oh, and I breathe too. I literally count down my breath. So I'll inhale and count to 5 and then exhale and count to 5. And that helps get more oxygen to my brain so that I don't feel like as disoriented.
Awesome. Oops. Boom. Okay. Boom. Okay. So it feels like you've kind of been in our class a little bit because a lot of these things we do or have been reading about. So it's kind of interesting. But it took you kind of going through your own set of experiences, the burnout, the panic, the anxiety, the stress, etc., to figure out what works for you. And I like to share with the class that, you know, not only our time in class, but also the resources that they have or the required textbooks that they have, they're kind of like a gift basket, right? There's a whole bunch of different kind of gifts and presents in there where they're able to kind of pick and choose which ones work for managing their stress, managing the chaos that's going on in their lives. And they'll notice that maybe some things work for maybe a little bit of time, others it works forever, or some things don't work at all. But it's kind of like this option to kind of pick and choose what works for the here and now. So are there other tools that you specifically like to use? I know that you talked about breathing, you talked about going on a bit of a nature walk or a walk to kind of bring you back down to reality, but what other practical tools have you utilized or do you utilize to support you in kind of managing the mayhem of 21st century life?
Okay, so one of my favorite things, I love journals, but not just like a regular blank journals. I like journals with prompts. So when I was going through my divorce, if you guys read my little Insta story, one of my friends, he bought me this journal called Start Where You Are.
Can you pause for a quick second? For some reason, your volume went low again. So I don't know if you have something that covered up what you were doing.
So weird. I don't know. Am I loud again?
No, but I mean, we could hear you, but it just went low for some reason.
Oh, that's so strange. I can call in. I can turn off my audio.
Can you guys hear? Yeah. Okay, it's fine.
Okay. Yeah, so one journal prompt is Start Where You Are. This book has been life-changing for me. And there's all these like really cool questions that I need to ask myself. Like, they'll make me write a list of things, like write down all the things that excite you and then write down all the things that slow you down. And I usually do this one at night or early in the morning, just so that I can kind of do a bit of a thought dump, as I call it. I like my brain to be clear. Or they'll write down something, you know, they'll ask you stuff like things that you feel you need luck for and ways to get them without having any luck. Or anything like, you know, close your eyes and think about your ideal life, one that really makes you smile. Write it down with feeling. All of those things are great visualization techniques for me to just define who I want to be, because at the end of the day, you have the power to control the future, but you don't have the power to control the past. And then for the present, you should just be here. Mm-hmm. Right? And then my other favorite one, because I'm an insomniac and I'm also a night owl, is the nocturnal journal. This is like my nighttime thought dump. I'll usually have a hot cup of tea or something that will put me to sleep. And I'll just sit here and write in this book. And the things that they ask you is like, what's the scariest thing that you've ever done? And then what's like the scariest thing you think that you'll ever do? Or, you know, what's your biggest fear for the future? How likely is it to come true? What can you do to stop it? And if you can't stop it, how can you accept it? And just doing all these little exercises, it really eliminates my fear, because at the end of the day, life is a journey. It's not a destination. And those transitions and changes and stuff like that, they don't ever go away. So it's really about you learning how to master yourself.
Exactly. Yes. This is awesome. This makes me so excited. Because one, they have a book. One of their required texts is by personal design. So it is a tool really to kind of help them understand what life looks like now, but then also starting to create it from scratch, right? Not based on other people's expectations or maybe even their own outdated expectations of who they should be and what they should be doing, but really creating it from the now. But I think what's also important about that is understanding, to your point, that it's going to change. You're in some of you are 18, 19, early 20s. Who you are going to be mid-20s is going to be vastly different from that. And then when 30s hits, you're like, who the hell was that person? Because you're completely different even in your 30s, right? And so that journey just continues, and you get to continue to create and recreate. There isn't this, sort of set in stone thing or process or even chronological order. It's fucking messy, right? And it's okay to color outside of the lines. That's how you experiment and explore what you like, what you don't like, what you want, what you don't want, etc. So I'm super glad that you shared that. Other practical tools that you have found helpful, I think that's really kind of what this class is about. Like I said, is just providing those, what can I do right now, right here, right now, in this moment? Because you may not have like the finances to go to a week-long retreat in Bali or whatever, right? Or even the apps nowadays. Sometimes the apps are very expensive. So, but there are some that are affordable. And I think you shared one yesterday, which
yeah. So my favorite app is it's called the Insights Timer. And I sent you the links for you to share with them. But Insights Timer, it's a free app. There's thousands of free meditations on there, and you can go and filter by like the time length. So maybe you only have 5 minutes in the morning to meditate. You can choose a subject. They have meditations to increase your sports performance. They have meditations to help you overcome your fears, to reduce your anxiety, to help you be more creative. You can choose between having a male's voice or a woman's voice. You can choose secular stuff. You can choose religious materials. You can choose theta brain music that helps you calm down. All of these amazing things, and all of it is free. That is something to take advantage of right now. And then if you are interested in going to therapy, and I didn't share this in the class yesterday, but I'll share it with this class. One thing that I did do while I was in college was there is an association, it's called NAMI, the National Association. Wait, am I low?
No, you got high again. So I was just like, okay, that's weird.
Listen, I have an old MacBook. Just blame it on the technology. But NAMI, it stands for the National Association for Mental Illness. They offer free group therapy sessions. And there's a NAMI, there are multiple NAMIs in every single state in the country. So if you are interested in getting group therapy, you can literally go just pop into any of those group therapy sessions and talk with a bunch of other people who probably deal with the same issues and get advice from a counselor for free.
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna switch it up and open it up for questions. Yeah.
If you could go back to your 18-year-old self, what is the one thing you would tell yourself?
Are you laughing because I'm what I'm laughing at?
Oh, I was gonna say something like, when I was 18, I would tell myself, don't pluck my eyebrows so thin. But oh gosh. Okay, but
that's a truthful thing. That's the thing. So, okay, that's one of the things. Beauty tip, Connor. There you go.
No, but like in terms of what, like my mental health or just like my life choices?
Plucking your eyebrows is the mental health thing too.
I was trying to be cute. I was not cute. Okay, so like one thing I would say is like, do not think that the person that you meet at 18 is going to be your end all be all, and do not fall into the hype of this whole my better half thing. That shit does not exist. You should not have a better half. You should exist as a whole ass person.
Absolutely. And we went into depth a little bit about this yesterday too, because that was like, preach. But basically, I think sometimes people don't really understand what that means. And so it's like we have these fun phrases that we use, like, oh, you complete me. And it's like, but why? That doesn't really make sense. Like, seriously, like, if you think about it, if someone has to complete you, that means there's some voids in your life, right? There's either attachment issues or things that you haven't resolved, and you're expecting this person to come in and make it all better. But then as soon as they do something that is not according to your expectations or meeting that need, then you're mad at them, when really that was your responsibility, right? So you complete yourself. You find the things that make you happy. You find the things that make you whole. And the other person is just icing on the cake. They're just a complement to who you are. They're not completing you. And I think that's really something that our society, from the movies that we have watched since Cinderella, right? And all of these other things, even maybe our family expectations, that's just kind of what we say and what we hear and what we think. But ultimately, you're never going to be fulfilled if you don't know how to fulfill your own needs, because someone else can't always do that.
Yeah.
Other 18-year-old feedback that you would have for yourself?
Feedback from myself, spend more time by yourself. And I say that because up until you go to college, your entire identity is based on what your parents teach you or what the people around you teach you, right? And you really think about it, it's your parents' job to get you oriented into the world, right? That's why cultural differences exist, because we all live and think differently. And that's why, like, some people think it's normal, to put pots in the oven, while other people are like, why you don't put them in the cabinet? It's just cultural differences, different storage systems. So I say spend time by yourself, because your identity is based on how you interact with the world. And if you constantly have people around you to influence how you interact with the world, you will never get to know who your true self is. So spend more time alone. Travel by yourself. I've traveled to Thailand and I've traveled to Amsterdam by myself, and I was scared as hell, but it was the best thing I have ever done, because you don't have to sit here and wait on other people to make plans. You can just go out when you want to go out. You can talk to whoever you want to speak to. You can move throughout the world at your own pace. And I think that is something that I wish I would have knew sooner.
Other questions? No? Okay. One last piece of advice, is it for your 18-year-old self?
For my 18-year-old self, man, who was I at 18? Besides the eyebrows thing, I would say, don't think that like where you're at right now is where you're going to end up. It's just not. It's absolutely impossible. Impossible. Imagine if you guys came to school dressed the way you used to dress your freshman year of high school. It would be an absolute shit show.
So one of the things that we're working on right now is a research paper. So they're looking at different mindfulness or stress management tools, just different facts related to kind of health, well-being, but also one of the components of that assignment, in case you didn't read that part, is really kind of understanding or including how diversity is considered as it relates to that specific tool. Yeah. And I know that GrillzandGranola, which is your company that I'd like you to share a little bit more about, a lot of that was founded as a result of what you were experiencing in terms of representation within the fitness and wellness space as well. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so when I was 25, I had gotten a divorce and I was really depressed. And on top of that, I had this panic disorder. So naturally, when people break up, I did what every other girl does. I like spent a lot of time in the gym and I spent a lot of time partying, trying to, you know, scoop up some new snacks. And the alcohol, it made me feel like trash because alcohol is a depressant. So you have to stay away from it, especially if you have an anxiety issue. It will make it worse. And it also dehydrates you. Dehydration equals less oxygen flowing in your brain, less hemoglobin, which just leads to more anxiety. So no more alcohol, no more partying. I decided to spend more time in the gym because exercise actually made me feel good. And this was the year that Drake and Future had dropped What a Time to Be Alive. So I kept sitting in the gym, being all sad, listening to Digital Dash over and over again. And then I decided that, you know what, I'm tired of taking Zumba and I'm tired of the TrapAerobics classes. So let me just make my own shit. So from there, I became a certified fitness instructor and I created this class called TrapAerobics. And when I say within the first year of me doing that, I taught at Facebook, I taught at Tumblr, I got featured in all these different like magazines. I scored like an ad in a Target campaign, all because I was so hurt and I wanted to distract myself from my pain that I decided that I was going to do something productive. But outside of just me doing it for myself, I did it for my culture because, like I had told you guys, I grew up with 7 siblings. And I feel like I've been anxious all my life, but my mom cannot afford to send me to therapy because, you know, that's the last thing on the list when you have to think about rent and food and clothes and water. So I started to create all of these different experiences for people who come from my community and women who look like me, because there's a lot of barriers that exist to even help us get access to you know, tools that make us feel better. An example of that, the way New York City is structured, most of the rich people live in Manhattan. And I would say all of the really diverse communities are very siloed and they're all on the outskirts of Manhattan. Like they're in Brooklyn, they're deep in Queens. You know, there's a reason why there's a thing called inner city youth, because all of the major cities in the country are built around our coastal cities, right? Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, Houston, all around the water. So inner city, the closer you are within the city, the further you are away from all of the money and all the happenings of that city. So I'd say that there are a few barriers that exist. One is money. If you want to take SoulCycle in New York, it will cost you a minimum of $38 per class. And if you want to get the shoes, the towel, the water bottle, now you're up to $42. I don't know anyone who can actually afford to regularly go to SoulCycle and pay $42 per class. But even me with a salary, I would not put that in my budget. So money is a big issue. And then if you can't afford to go to a single class, then, you know, maybe you can get a gym membership, but that's still an additional cost. The cheapest gym that you can find in New York City costs $26 a month. And the most expensive one is about $200. And that cheap gym is not even anywhere near any of the cities or towns where people of color and lower income communities live, right? So money is a big problem, and it basically marginalizes the community's access to fitness. Other thing is distance. If you work a full-time job and you have to commute a whole hour into the city just to take a fitness class, that's going to be a problem, right? Time is money. And then the other thing from a nutritional perspective is that a lot of lower income communities exist in food deserts. And by food deserts, I mean towns and places where you cannot get foods that are closer to the source, meaning foods that are like plant-based or fresh. You know, by the time the meat hits the supermarket, it's been sitting and moving for a couple of days, which is a bit problematic, meaning that the quality of the food is less, meaning we get less nutrients. And so those nutrients that fuel all of the brain processes and stuff like that are not fueling our brain properly. So those are like the 3 big things. It's money, it's distance, and it's food. And all of those things affect your access to mental health and wellness resources.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So for my class, I don't use equipment, which keeps my overhead costs low. And so I can offer the class at a very cheap rate. And then I also opened it up where if you can't even afford to pay $20 for the class, and you pay what you can, because it's more important for me to have people feel better. And also trap music, everybody listens to it, at least people from my community. So it just made sense. And then from there, I started just recognizing that there are so many women who look like me who are in this wellness and fitness space. They don't know each other. So I started a conference called Zen Day, and I had Under Armour come and sponsor it. It gave everyone free sleep recovery wear. I had all these companies give money and products and stuff like that so that we can provide more resources to my community. But I also gave all of these women who had these businesses the opportunity to sell their merchandise at the conference so that they could also make money and keep money in the community. So that's kind of like me coming from a dark place and then recognizing that I can actually make an impact in the world. It was not easy, but I think that, you know, anxiety, it can be detrimental, but it's also a superpower for me. And I recognize that. And so that's why I don't push back from it when it happens. And I don't make myself a victim. I just say, okay, I'm an anxious person. I'm a high functioning anxious person.
Right. Absolutely. Now, one of the things that I want you to kind of talk to, which we didn't really get into yesterday, but how were you able to kind of parlay the things that you studied in college into what you're doing now? Like, how were you able to make those transitions? Because sometimes I think that school makes you think very linearly. Like, yeah. I studied this, so these are the only options that I'm able to kind of professionally. But I like to get people to think bigger and outside of the box and look at what are the transferable skills that you can take from one space and apply them to many different spaces. So you make yourself invaluable to any industry or space that you move within. So can you talk a little bit about how you built this versatile individual that you are, and kind of like what skills you were able to parlay from what you did at undergrad to now?
Yeah, so in undergrad, I studied English and journalism. And for English, my focus was on secondary education. So I had a very brief stint as a high school teacher. And I realized that high school students, not my jam. So I quit on the second day of school.
Yeah.
It's like, nope, can't do this. But so my first job out of college, I worked at an advertising awards company, which meant that there was lots of parties, lots of booze. But I was responsible for education and diversity coordination, like just working on programs, right? Highly administrative. But at the end of the day, the core of me, I am a teacher. I teach people things. I transfer knowledge. That is what I know how to do. So for me, it can transfer in any sort of space that I sit in. And then also being an English major, I know how to communicate really well in a written way, in written form. And I also know how to think creatively and how to tell good stories. So how those skills transfer into me just pivoting into the marketing world. My resume is bomb because I studied English. But also like when I go to every single job, I ask people a lot of questions and I try to make sure I learn at least one new skill, because at the end of the day, to be honest with you guys, no one has ever asked me for my college degree. No one has ever asked to see a copy of it. I could have lied and said I went to Stanford, but I'm a real one, so I'm not. But no one's going to ask you for your college degree. They really want to know, what can you do? What do you know how to do? So I know how to teach. I know how to write. I know how to organize things. So using those skills was how I was actually able to even build my company, like writing the copy. What's my tagline going to be? What am I all about? You know, even the name, Grills and Granola, it's Grills and Granola because grills are the gold-plated dentures of hip-hop, and then granola is the only healthy thing I could find in my community when I was younger. And to me, it's synonymous with music, but also with making health more accessible, right? And I tell those stories, and it makes sense when I say it, and that's because I had already crafted that story in my head and written it down before I even introduced it to the world. So it's really about, those are like the skills, really. It's like I'm really good at writing. I'm really good at organizing. And I'm good at teaching people stuff. And I know how to learn things. I spent 9 months planning out my business. It took me 3 months to study for my group fitness certification exam, another 3 months to actually set up the legal business structure and get insurance and all that stuff. and then another 3 months to pilot the class and watch myself and iterate and make sure that it was great before I release it to the public. And I think that having such due diligence and being so detail oriented is why I was able to get all this press with less experience than a lot of other group fitness instructors in the city.
Mm-hmm. But it was knowing your skill set, essentially, knowing what value you bring to the table, knowing what's to you, knowing what impact also you wanted to be able to make. So it was, again, having that crystal clear vision.
Exactly.
Just being that, because when you're authentically who you are, you don't have to try.
You don't.
First just synchronizes the events and the people to meet your needs, right? But when we're putting forth our representative self and trying to be what others want us to be, or who we thought about, but maybe it's, I'm making this decision because my family said, or because society says this is all that I have the option to be, then that's when we get frustrated. That's when we get stressed. That's when we're not fulfilled. And that's when more of the bumps in the road happen that we can't seem to get over. But when you're authentic and stay true to yourself, those bumps in the road, they're still there. They don't go away. There's going to be people that support. There's going to be the doors that close, but you're true to yourself, and it just makes life easier.
Exactly. Look at Cardi B. Cardi B is a prime example of how being yourself can get you so far. Even Lil Nas X. like you just have to be yourself, and people can see when you're being disingenuous. Right. But that's why it always starts with spending a lot of time by yourself.
Yeah.
Most of the great artists are weird as fuck. Prince, weird as fuck. People will tell you, but everybody can feel his aura and everybody knows what a Prince song sounds like. Kanye too, right? Kanye, different. Beyonce too. It's like they're untouchable, but they spend a lot of time, doing what makes them happy and not relying on other people.
Absolutely. Any questions from you all?
Ooh.
Okay. So then we will do 3 things, or let's do 1 thing that you wish that you would have learned or been told before transitioning into adulthood.
Oh, shit.
Okay, let's do 2.
I wish that someone would have told me how taxes work. Because no one ever teaches you that.
Right.
And I also wish that someone would have spent more time teaching me about how to be emotionally intelligent. Because you have to know how to read a room, and honestly, you also must learn how to draw on your emotions and lean into them. Especially because when I'm pitching business, when I speak with emotion, it actually resonates more. Like, people actually gravitate more toward emotion and less to the words that I'm actually saying. And so that's something that I wish I would have learned sooner, instead of trying to mask my emotions and explode.
Yeah. No, emotional intelligence, I honestly feel like it is the must-have skill for anything now and in the future. It's not your IQ these days.
Yes.
Super intelligent, but if you cannot connect with people, which likely means you don't have the ability to, you're not self-aware, and you don't have the ability to manage your emotions, you're not going to get very far, because people are everywhere. From your relationships to your career to even your family dynamics, and you can try to hide from them if you want to, especially on the holidays, but they're everywhere. And so you're gonna have to interface with people, and so having emotional intelligence is huge. And mindfulness meditation is one of the tools and journaling, which is something that she didn't know about this, by the way, but I have them write a lot. Some of them don't really like it, but it's honestly the most powerful tool that has allowed me to understand myself, how I respond to different things, allowed me to get more clear about certain visions that I want to bring into the world, right? There's just so many benefits It's allowed me to be more compassionate towards other people, because now I'm having to sit and see some of my own shit and be like, okay, girl, okay, you can do better, right? And so when you learn how to be that person for yourself, it really helps you to be that person for other people. So writing and mindfulness, other mindfulness tools, because writing can technically serve as a mindfulness strategy. But mindfulness is like the foundation to building self-awareness or emotional intelligence. So definitely thank you for sharing that. And I wish somebody would have told me that sooner too.
Everybody is a rapper for a reason. Remember I told you this? I was like, everybody wants to be a rapper because everyone has so many thoughts in their head and they want to get them out and also sound cool.
Yes.
I want to be a damn rapper in Atlanta.
Okay, so finish these sentences. Dear 20-something self.
Don't get married.
Don't get married.
Not the one. There is no one. There is no one. You are the one.
Check and check. Okay, the key ingredients to peace of mind despite my external circumstances
Is learning how to make yourself happy and finding joy in your existence. Yeah, like I big myself up when I don't burn eggs, you know. I can't cook. I try, I really do, but I can't. And when I do not burn eggs, I big myself up, and that brings me joy. Like, you have to do that.
Wins. You gotta celebrate. Okay. Love is
Understanding, and it's also knowing what buttons to push and choosing not to push them.
Love is not.
Love is not a pain in the ass, it should not be.
Mm-hmm. Success is not.
Success is not sleep deprivation. I don't like when people tweet about how they didn't sleep and all that stuff. I always tell people an uncharged iPhone is useless.
Ooh, did we not talk about that? Oh, wait, hold on. Let me turn the camera so you can see. I just saw some people pointing at me. Did I see that, or did you just say that? She literally just said that. I did not say that.
You know, I've literally texted someone before and I said, you know, I could waste your time if you want me to, but I liked you better when you slept.
Really? Okay. Success is.
Ooh, success is honestly whatever you want to make it. I don't live to me, success doesn't exist on anybody else's terms but mine.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Any last questions, thoughts, feedback, advice?
I would love to ask them a question.
Ooh, wait, there was a question.
Mine's kind of like an odd question, but I'm just curious because, I mean, like in all honesty, I see a lot of influencers that are like big on the, like especially on coffee and caffeine, and there's like mixed reactions to it. And I was just curious about like do you think that, it's a really random, like out of left field question.
No, nothing is random.
Yeah, like drinking lots of caffeine.
What was the question? Do I drink a lot of coffee?
But yeah, like your opinion on like especially like caffeine and like just use like things like that in terms of like health and
yeah. I actually stopped drinking coffee like 2 weeks ago at the advisement of my therapist because it's a stimulant and it increases my heart rate, and when my heart rate goes up, my anxiety gets worse. So for me, I try to avoid caffeine because I believe that my body can naturally wake itself up.
Which I think is a very valid, it goes back to what you said earlier and what, again, the book is all about, life by personal design, which means you personally have to design it, meaning you also have to sit and do the reflection to know what works for you or what you want to work for you, and then do those things. Like the choices that you make or not need to align to how you want your body to perform, and the visions that you want to bring to life, right? So it's just about knowing yourself ultimately.
What I wanted to ask though, and whoever wants to answer this, but I would love to know, like, how has social media affected your mental health in college? Because when I was in college, it really wasn't like a big thing. And I feel like, you know, now that you guys have access to Instagram and you've like kind of grown up with it, like, how does that affect your self-esteem and just your overall outlook on your college experience right now? If anybody wants to answer that, I'd love to know.
Let's just say Facebook wasn't even a thing when I was
Yeah, like we had Skonex in MySpace.
What?
Hey, don't say what like that. Okay, there's hands over here. Oh,
Okay.
right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, I don't know if it's like this for anyone else, but it was a lot more relevant in high school, and I struggled with it a lot more in high school, and like, I think it was because I saw the same people every day, and I grew up with those people, and I cared a lot more about like what I was portraying to those people, and I got into college, and like, I mean, I do see the same people, but it's just a very different vibe and flow, and I don't care about social media as much. Like, I don't find myself checking people's story and worrying about what I'm putting on my story, and I don't like scroll through Instagram as much, and I don't know, I just don't find it as relevant in college like I've stuff to do.
Is that, just out of curiosity, is that something that other people notice in their, oh, so we have more hands.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, new hand, yes.
Personally, kind of like what she said, I kind of, not that I don't care, but to a certain extent, I really don't care what you have going on besides like family and stuff. Other than that, I mean, I really just don't care to see what other people have going on, but like seeing other people around me, I can tell that like some people don't live life in real life, they live life for Instagram and what's going on in social media. Like, they'll have unrealistic expectations of what they think life should be, but it's like you still have a whole life to live. So for me personally, I feel like it's more about living. Like, I get on Instagram personally to laugh. I don't get on there to see other people doing whatever they have going on. But I feel like you just have to live life, like be in the moment and experience everything that's going on around you, because you don't get those moments back.
Yeah.
Some other hands went up over here also, or no? Oh, over there, okay.
Like, in response to both of them, I think that like for me at least, I believe like there's like a duality to it. The duality that I see in it is that I use it a lot for, in a different aspect than they mentioned, I use it a lot for like inspirational, like motivation and stuff, like who I look up to, and I'm like, oh, okay, like I can get there, or like how did they get there, and it's kind of just like seeing like what they did. But also like I have my closest friends, like we keep in touch, like we text each other. So by the same token, a lot of our communication happens through like sending things that like relate to each other and kind of like like help make like your day better and create like a positive influence. Like that's what I notice the most, is that it's kind of a an outlet for like getting back like positive reinforcement from people who I care about, or sending them something that I know will make their day better.
Got it. So it's really just people you guys care about, but like random influencer strangers, you don't feel like they have any effect on, I guess, your self-esteem or like how your identity. Well, that's great.
Wait, hold on, let's see. We have some other things going on here.
Personally, not for me, but with people that I know that I secondhand experience, like with influencers that are our age, like 18, between like 18 and 22. There's other people that are on Instagram, that are on like TV, that are on like social media that are technically more successful just because they're advanced with their money and with their social life. So when you see that on like Instagram and Twitter and just Facebook, they kind of tend to compare themselves to that. So that's where like I think mental health in college students kind of degrade, just because they think that they should be there already, even though like we all have our different paths to our own success.
That's really cool. And can I ask one more question, Miss Marisha? One more question?
Yes.
Okay. Have you guys ever like met somebody in real life and then, I don't know, you started following them on the gram and then you realize that you don't like them as much? Like not even, it doesn't have to be romantic, even just like platonically. I'm just curious, like, has there ever been a disconnect between someone's, you know, social self and their real self, and has that actually affected, you know, like how you perceive them in real life? Doesn't even matter. Like what if you meet a girl, she's really cool in real life, and then on Instagram she acts like a, can I say thotty? Like, does that change your perception of the person?
Okay. Yeah.
I'm curious.
Well, I think like it's kind of the opposite sometimes. Like people are all like super shy like in person, but they portray themselves completely differently online. But I think like you were saying with the thotty thing, like some girls like from high school, like they were super nice like in person and like I don't know, like really genuine, but online like you could tell that they were trying to like portray themselves in like a different way. Like they were trying to be, I guess, just I don't know, like the way they were portraying themselves, it seemed a lot more fake, even though they weren't actually like that, you know.
Okay.
One last one.
I saw one hand in the back on the right hand side.
Sorry, I don't know what. Okay, anybody else? Okay, this way.
I mean, from like my experience, like I have a friend who's actually Urban Outfitters will like send her free stuff because she's like an influencer. She like gets because she will advertise for them, and I found like it never like changed my perspective. Actually, she's one of the few people I know who's like very like honest. Like she acts the same way, she portrays herself like in the same like confidence and manner. So I haven't exactly had that experience, but when I know people because I used to do ballet. And in that, it's a very political environment, and so like you portray yourself in social media the way that you want like companies to see you, and it's in a very like almost overly confident manner. Like you hide like any mistakes, and pretty much you only like present your best self. So I think in that aspect, it kind of happens a lot. And so there's a lot of people who I've met, and I've been like more or less surprised. It doesn't really change my perspective on them, but it kind of is more humbling because you're like, wow, I thought you were this like I thought you were so much different, and I realized that you're struggling as much as like I am in this.
Okay, one last one, and then I know that this is midterm season, so they're ready to go. All right.
For me, I feel like especially in high school, a lot of the people that I knew, they would be very depressed, or they were dealing with a lot of things, or a lot of like body issues, but then they would portray themselves as like very confident and happy people. And I feel like, I don't know, that was something just like I saw a lot.
Wow.
All right, before we put things away, because we're actively listening, right? Okay, everybody, tell Chavonne thank you, goodbye, and we love you, and all of the above. Can you see everybody?
Bye, guys.
Thank you. I told you this class is way more interactive. So
yeah, like the energy is amazing.
All right. Well, I love you. Thank you so much, and we will share this with you soon. Bye.
Have a good one, guys. Good luck.